Hello, or should I say Guten Tag.
Guten Tag.
My name is Kelly Valley. I'm a Napa Valley Wine Academy professional wine educator and a WSET diploma graduate. Welcome. Today is German wine law. I know what you're thinking. She must be crazy. Can we start drinking now?
Prost.
Well, their laws have not helped their reputation. Their laws, as students, it's really challenging enough, but it's further complicated by recent changes in their laws by still having to know their old ones. Also, knowing that the majority of German wine is sold in bulk, being quantity over quality conscious, isn't helping their cause. But the Germans deserve more. Let me show them. If you start by understanding their origin story, it starts making more sense. Also, if you knew German. Remember that Germany is at the 51-degree north latitude with a cool continental climate where the grapes frequently struggle to ripen. That's why from the 1800s to World War II, most wine was fermented to dry, with the climate being too cool, i.e. not allowing the grapes to ripen enough to accumulate enough sugar to create a balanced sweet wine. This was only possible from the most prized or best sites, with the sweet Riesling being both rare and valuable. Remember, taste in those times are also different than now. Sweetness was prized, sugar was harder to come by and was valued in wine. There wasn't sugary things available everywhere you turned at those times. In fact, in the 1830s, it was determined that grapes of different levels of ripeness should be harvested separately based on their must weights. Must weights, what's that? Well, it's measured in Oschels.
Oechsles.
Oh, the vowels. Or must density in relation to water. In simple terms, the higher the must weight indicates the riper the grapes, which means more sugar has accumulated, indicating the better the site, thereby the higher quality. This premise has reigned supreme for years. Caveat though, must weight equates to the ability to make alcohol. So we've got to go back to our chemistry. All right. Let's start here, and we say grape sugar plus yeast equals alcohol, heat, and carbon dioxide, and not necessarily the final sweetness of the wine. I'll refer back to this a few times. So this must weight and ripeness of the grapes, thereby equating to the quality, was the center of the 1971 German wine law and is measured in Oschels.
Oechsles.
This law also delineated the wine regions and established 4 categories. All right, the first of the pyramids. Are you ready for this? Okay, so these pyramids were created and they're done in increasing order of must weight, with the lowest on the bottom and going up from there. So the lowest must weight, meaning the less ripe grapes, indicating the lower the quality. So this lowest category, called Deutscher wine,
Deutscher Wein.
is wine without a geographical indication, or the EU equivalent of basic wine category. Okay? Their label can show the vintage and the variety. The grapes must come from Germany, hence the name, Deutscher wine. Okay? The ABV should be 8.5 to 15%. It can be any style. These wines are meant to drink now. They're inexpensive and only a small percentage of the total production. Next rung up is land wine.
Landwein.
Okay, it's the EU equivalent of a PGI wine, or protected geographic indication. Okay, now 85% must originate from one of 26 named land wine regions like Rheingau. See how, the must grades are increasing, the areas are getting smaller. Again, the ABV is 8.5 to 15%, but now it can only be Halbtrocken
Halbtrocken.
or Trocken in style.
Trocken.
And we'll get to what that means. And last, it's also only a tiny percent of the total. So that brings us to the P's and Q's. Let's start with Qualitats wine.
Qualitätswein,
This contains both dry and sweet PDO wines, protected designation of origin. So no geographic indication, PGI, and now PDO. Now, Qualitats wines have less stringent regulation than Prodicats wine, and we'll get to that. The minimum must weight is now 50 to 72 otials. See, it's increasing as we go up, indicating a higher quality. The grapes now must come from one of 13 Anbaugebiete.
Anbaugebiet,
That's Mosel, Rheingau, Rheinhessen, etc. It can be of all styles, but they have a lower minimum ABV of 7%, allowing for sweeter wines with no max ABV. Okay, so if we don't convert all this grape sugar over to alcohol, what happens? We have residual sugar and lower alcohol. Okay, this is a high volume from this category. This is the majority of the daily drinkers. They require a lab analysis, a blind tasting, and giving an AP number which will appear on the label. This number indicates where and when it was tested, the location of the vineyard, and a lot number. Lastly, it can be enriched or capitalized to increase the ABV or mouthfeel. What's capitalization? Okay, capitalization is German for improving. It's the process of adding sugar to the must, this side of the equation, making this normally low strength, thin, sour wine saleable yearly. Remember the 51 degrees north latitude working against grape ripeness. But to differentiate this adulterated, I love saying that, wine from natural or no sugar added wine, it had to be stated on the label by a law formed in 1892, which is still the basis of German wine law now. Of note, the French deemed it unnecessary for the makers to disclose this adulteration if it was undertaken, as it was none of our concern. Like a mistress, this is our secret menu. We will adulterate if we want. All right, moving on to Prodicats wine.
Prädikatswein,
These are unadulterated, no sugar added, again PDO, these are both PDO, protected designation of origin wines from the top sites with the highest must weights and residual sugar. Although they can come from any grape, it's usually Riesling. The grapes must come from exclusively one of 40 recognized Bereich,
Bereich,
which are smaller than Qualitats wine or Anbaugebiet.
Anbaugebiet,
Product means distinctive in German, and there are 6 levels. Okay. So we're going to look just on the left side of this. These are our Prodicats wine levels. They range from lowest must weight to highest must weight, with the top 3 ranging from dry to sweet, and the bottom just being sweet. So, this top category, cabinet.
Kabinett,
Cabinet means to set aside. Okay, it has the lowest must weight, equates to the lightest body, highest acid. Remember, they're not as ripe. They're dry to medium sweet. The alcohol level is 7 to 12%, and there's notes of green and citrus fruits. This is followed by Spätlese.
Spätlese,
Spät means late.
Spät,
These are fully ripe, picked 2 weeks later than the cabinet grapes. All right? They have riper notes like stone fruit, a higher alcohol, and fuller. Why? They have more grape sugar to convert to alcohol. Makes sense. They can also be dry to medium sweet and a minimum of 7% alcohol. Next is Auslese.
Auslese,
Auslese means selection or picking out. You squint your eyes, it almost says selection. So these are extra ripe bunches that have been selected out. Some are hand harvested, some are machined and sorted by hand later in the winery. They're even riper and more concentrated. Some have botrytis, but it's not required, which adds complexity and notes of honey. You can see as we're coming down how the price would be increasing. there's more labor, there's more time on the vine, there's lower yields, and there's less volume. All adds to increased price. This is the last of the potentially dry in the product Cox wine. It also has a minimum alcohol of 7%. So that brings us to the 3 sweet in the product Cox wine. First is Beerenauslese.
Beerenauslese.
Remember, Auslese was selections, put your eyes. Beeren is berries. So individually selected berries, otherwise known as BA. Okay? They're always sweet. Botrytis is common but not required. These ripe berries with their high sugar content and higher must weight lead to a long, slow fermentation as the yeast get overwhelmed by all this sugar. So what happens? It results in a lower alcohol level and residual sugar, and you'll see alcohol levels as low as 5.5%. They'll have notes of dried stone fruits. It's not yearly, only when suitable conditions for botrytis exist. That would be brief periods of humidity followed by dry and sunny. You'll see in small quantities. So these low volumes, labor intense, make this rare and expensive. Next is ice wine.
Eiswein.
Ice. Makes sense. It has the same minimum must weight as our Beerenauslese, but it must be picked when frozen at -7 degrees Celsius. It also must be pressed while still frozen, no artificial freezing allowed. So, the water content is now trapped and frozen, leaving behind higher sugar and acid levels in small quantities. Okay? So, this then leads to notes of peach and grapefruit, no honey since no botrytis. We don't want rot in these grapes this time, okay? No botrytis, they must be healthy grapes. So since a high percentage of these grapes are lost during this process, as you can imagine, that leaves low yields, lower quantity, which will lead to what? Higher expense or cost for this wine. Last in this category, Trockenbeerenauslese.
Trockenbeerenauslese.
Okay, we got this. Trocken dry, Beeren berry, Auslese selection. Squint your eyes. Okay. So, otherwise known as TBA. Botrytis this time is a must. So you have these shriveled, raisin-like grapes. Similar to what happens with the ice wine where the water content is frozen. But this time the water content has evaporated, leaving behind tiny quantities of sweet but balanced by high acidity juice. These same treats make it ageable. Okay? So these extremely low yields, tiny quantities, and only in suitable years makes it the most expensive of all wine in Germany. Okay. So moving on to the other side. So remember I said that these first 3 can be dry to medium sweet. Well, to help the consumer, they have some other identification terms that you may see on the label. Okay. These include Trocken,
Trocken.
which means dry. Okay. Halbtrocken,
Halbtrocken.
off dry, or I think half dry. Lieblich
Lieblich.
is medium or medium sweet. Not to be confused with Liebfrau Milch,
Liebfraumilch.
Our Lady's milk. Next is Sass,
Süß.
or sweet. And last for good measure is Feinherb.
Feinherb.
Not a legal term. It means fine dry, and it has a sweetness level of at least Halbtrocken, but can be higher. So not very clear and confusing. So besides chapelization, there was gallization, or Sass Reserve,
Süß Reserve.
which is when sugar or unfermented grape juice is now added to the finished wine after fermentation to make the final wine sweet. Remember, chapelization is done before fermentation to facilitate the fermentation to increase the final alcohol level, but does not necessarily equate to the final wine being sweet. Unfortunately, these inexpensive methods were overdone to produce large amounts of poor quality wine from poor quality vineyards. Well, you can imagine this pissed off the quality-minded or nature wine
Naturwein,
producers because it had the effect of making them all look bad. So in 1910, they struck back. A group wanting higher standards than the current law provided for, and to showcase the natural ripeness of their estate vineyards, this outlying group was formed outside the German law, which is now known as the VDP. I won't even try and pronounce this.
Verband Deutscher Prädikats Weinguter.
The VDP, adding to the fun of these quality-minded rebels with their own self-imposed laws and eagle bearing a bunch of grapes logo. This exclusive club of approximately 200 members sought higher, stricter standards than the current law allowed for. They wanted natural ripeness with no sugar added, nature-wide, and created a 4-tier classification system outside the German law. But at least they did something we're more familiar, based on vineyards, not must wait, which closely resembles Burgundy's system of region, village, premier, cru, and grand cru, going from larger to smaller and increasing in quality. But remember, they're Germans, so the terms are different. I like to think go A. Alrighty, the VDP, they're going to be down here. Okay. So at the bottom we have VDP Gutswein,
Gutswein,
that's regional, followed by VDP Ortswein,
Ortswein,
that's village, VDP Erste Lager,
Erste Lage,
Erste First or Premier Cru, followed by VDP Grosse Lager,
Großes Lage,
Grosse Grand or Grand Cru, not to be confused with Grosslagen,
Großlagen,
which is a collective vineyard site. And lastly, VDP Grosses Gulasch,
Großes Gewächs,
abbreviated GG, which are dry wines from Grosse Lager. Well, nothing like having two complex parallel systems for a good marketing plan. Are you still listening? There's more. Well, I'm sure you're wondering by now, what's going on with the 1971 German wine law? Yes. Well, the people continued to be confused despite the delineation of vineyards. They failed to take into account the change in taste to drier wines or to acknowledge the higher quality vineyards not in Club VDP.
Verband Deutscher Prädikats Weinguter.
So back to the drawing board. Starting in 2021, the Germans thought the VDP was onto something. So once again, changes were made which will be effective in 2026, but you are fortunate enough to have to know both systems as they'll be carryover. The new classification system is under the name of Qualitätswein. At least it's a term you're familiar with. It creates a hierarchy based on geographical hierarchy. Sound familiar? Like Burgundy and VDP. Area, region, village, and vineyard again. Again, with increasingly smaller units under the theme that smaller is better. Now, this will not only work alongside the exclusive VDP, but also the existing Prädikat system on must-wait. So Prädikat system must-wait can complement the new Qualitat system based on geographical hierarchy. All right, you know it's coming, another pyramid. All right, so this is going after our other pyramid, which was based on must-wait. We knew that the P's and Q's, Qualitätswein and Prädikatswein, were both PDO, or Protected Designation of Origin wines. So all of these from here on out are going to be PDO. Keep that in mind. Okay. So if we go and we continue on, knowing these are PDO wines, are now by geographic hierarchy, our lowest area is going to be the area. Again, these are grapes from one of 13 Anbaugebiet.
Anbaugebiet,
That's Mosel, Rheingau, Rheinhessen, etc. Next, smaller, is region. It's no longer going to be called Bayerisch,
Bereich,
which is smaller than an Anbaugebiet, or Grosslager,
Großlagen,
collective vineyard site. Okay? We're moving up to village, also known as Ortswein.
Ortswein.
Ortswein, over here, the VDP. And last is vineyard or Einzellage.
Einzellage.
Okay? We're not done with the pyramids. I know you want to be, but I promise this is the last one. And because of all the pyramids, I'm adding a camel to give a nice effect. So we can't just stop at vineyard. Come on, we're copying Burgundy. So what do we do? So they added off of vineyard, Einzellage,
Einzellage.
single vineyard. Okay, but this is now followed by an erstes gouache.
Erstes Gewächs.
Erstes first, so premier cru. But within it, you can have a specified parcel of wine called a Gewannen.
Gewannen.
And this is followed by a grosses gouache. Grosses Gewannen.
Großes Gewächs.
You can also have a Gewannen inside. It says a parcel. You there, please? See? He's on the floor. It's okay. So, these last two of note can only be dry wines. Alright, getting it? Alright, good reading. So I made a chart with the key points to show how traits drop off and quality in theory drops off as the geographical area gets bigger. These are both based off of our knowledge we're expected to know from WSET. Alrighty. The big chart. Okay. So if we notice at the top here, grosses gouache.
Großes Gewächs.
It has all these traits. Single grape, single vineyard, matched taste of the region. Have to label the vintage. It has a specific sale date. It can only be dry. Remember, these two can only be dry. Committee approved, hand-picked, max yield of 50 and a minimum ABV of 12%. We go on to an Erstes.
Erstes Gewächs.
We really just lose the hand-pick and minimal changes in max yield and the alcohol levels. But we get down to Einzellage.
Einzellage.
No longer a single grape, not only on dry, we lost the committee, we're only at a cabinet level, and it goes down from there so that we're only showing to label the vintage for the last regions. So it's like the opposite upside down pyramid. As the area increases, in theory, quality decreases. But enough about pyramids. All right, should we even try the label? We've come this far, so I think we should. With the help of Per Carlson from an article in bkwine.com, I'm going to give this a try. All right. So, only the name of the Anbaugebiet,
Anbaugebiet.
Mosel, Rheingau, Rheinhessen, has to be labeled on every Qualitätswein and Prädikatswein,
Qualitätswein. Prädikatswein.
along with the area, region, or village. But the actual term Anbaugebiet
Anbaugebiet.
does not have to appear, and this is unchanged. The new category of region, the term region replaces the name of a village, a Großlage,
Großlage.
collective vineyard site. So instead of Peace Border Mikkelsburg, it will say Region Mikkelsburg. For a district, commune, or part of a village, which is kind of confusing because they don't do that anywhere else, those names can no longer be used with the name of the Großlage, collective vineyard site, only when it's a single vineyard. I think this odd. In addition, the actual term Einzellage,
Einzellage.
vineyard, will not be put on the label and will be assumed the consumer knows the vineyard names, a nod to the French. Now, for grosses and erstes gouache,
Großes erstes Gewächs.
they have to be labeled with their vineyard sites, but they'd want to do that, understandably, to show their quality or premium status. All right, so every Prädikatswein can be labeled as a Qualitätswein,
Qualitätswein.
but not vice versa, because remember, some of the Qualitats can be dry. And lastly, the existing Prädikats term, cabinet, Spotlese, Auslese, etc., are independent of the pyramids of origin. In theory, it's possible to have a Spotlese in all categories of area, region, village, and vineyard, with the exception of Erstes and Grosses Gouache, because they're only dry. So, What should I really know when I go to purchase? Learn the 13 Obergerie, Mosel, Rheingau, Rheinhessen, Baden-Baden, etc. Bring a map when it comes to the village, Ortswein, or vineyard, Einzellage. Okay? Lastly, the top two levels of Grosses and Erstes Grenache should be clearly labeled, indicating their quality level. Beer, anyone? Yes.